So now our esteemed Professor David Aaker.
Thank you, David, and thanks for having me. I'm going to start with two stories. The first one is about Dove soap. It was launched in 1955 as a beauty bar, and its whole reason to be is about it was a moisturizer. And famously, they would show ads where they pour cleansing cream into a bar of soap. And it was very successful. And but around 2003, their growth had slowed, and they were into shampoos and deodorants, and moisturizer didn't really do as much for them as it did at the outset. So they were looking for a way to grow, and they stumbled across the fact that there was a self-image problem among women. They did a survey of 3,000 women in 10 countries, and they found that less than 2% thought they were beautiful. So they thought they're really onto something there. And so they started the Dove Real Beauty social program. They started with some billboards, gray or gorgeous, fat or fit. And that got just a lot of attention and press. And then they started to do other kinds of things to support their program. In 2013, they did something called Sketches, where a woman's face was drawn on the basis of a self-description or the basis of a stranger's description. And under the tagline, "You're more beautiful than you think," the self-description was much, much less attractive. They got 180 million views. It was the #1 viral ad of all time in 1913. And most of those views didn't cost anything for Dove. Then there was something called Evolution, in which they showed that the appearance of a woman changed completely when you started putting on makeup. You did a hair deal, you did an eyebrow deal, you did lipstick, and so on, and the appearance evolved into something quite different. And so it makes you think, what's the real person behind that? That thing got unpaid exposure with $150 million. And then they developed the Dove Self-Esteem Project, where they tried to make sure that the teenage girls were addressing their self-image more positively, trying to build body self-confidence. And they reached 69 million kids. They reached 2.5 million parents or mentors that used all this content they developed. They developed sort of classroom content. They developed content for retreats, for group discussions, and so on. So it was a home run, and it's still going on. 18 years later, Dove is still the real beauty, the self-esteem brand. It was a home run. Literally hundreds of millions of women and teen girls were transformed. And Dove brand was energized. In the first 10 years, sales went from 2.4 billion to over 4 billion. My second story is a bit different. It was said in 1690 or so, the story goes, that Sir Christopher Wren, the architect for St. Paul's Cathedral, was walking down the street as they were building the cathedral, and he asked somebody, "What are you doing, workman?" He said, "I'm laying bricks, and I'm really a good bricklayer. You look at each brick." And he went on and he asked the next worker, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm building a wall. Look at my wall, how straight it is and how fine it is." And then he asked a third one, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a cathedral to honor the Almighty." Well, people today want to build cathedrals. They don't want to lay bricks. And so they want to be in a business that has a purpose that gives them meaning in their professional life. It's not enough to grow sales and profit, for sure. But it's not even enough to build insanely great products or provide the best customer service either. They want something that's more inspiring. They wanted something that will address societal challenges. And so when they talk about their meeting, when they get up in the morning, they'll feel better about it. The net result of this is that business needs social programs. It needs it because their employees and even customers and investors and others, they demand it. So you can't hire or retain employees anymore unless you have something that has a real a meaningful higher purpose. But there's some other reasons. And for one, these societal challenges we're facing, like the climate change or inequality, are really serious and visible and scary. And at the same time, it's very clear that business can contribute. Government just can't do it all. Even if government was functional, which it usually isn't, can't do it all. And business has got agility. A business has got creativity, they've got know-how, they've got resources that can come to bear in a social problem. And finally, business needs the energy and image lift that a social program can give. More on that shortly. So the question no longer is, should we do it, but how? And there's been hundreds of books written about this, a lot of thought and so forth. And in most of those, you don't see much about branding. So I've introduced branding into this ledge. And what I've argued is that the how question really involves two things. It involves creating a signature social program. A signature program that represents your business, represents its values and its purpose. It addresses a real societal need with an impactful program, and it's branded. There's a brand to guide and inspire. And then the social program is going to give value to a business by enhancing a business brand. To give it with the three parts of brand equity. It's going to give it energy, it's going to give it an image lift, and it's going to give it engagement opportunities. And that's how it's going to be justified. So let me talk about the first one first. Now, if you look at the social effort of most firms, what you get is a system of grants, a volunteer thing, maybe 2 days a week, people have access to their time to do good works. You see energy goals. You see ESG scores and ESG reports, all unbranded, mostly aimless, mostly almost impossible to communicate, and very impossible to differentiate you from others. So in walks signature programs. These are programs that, again, represent the purpose and culture of a business. It's who you are. And you see a signature program, you say, of course, Patagonia would do that. Salesforce would do that. It addresses real societal needs that touch people, that have an emotional sort of resonance with people. It's programs that are impactful. They're credible. You look at them and you say, yeah, that would work. And they're committed. You see these things like the Dove program now for 18 years has been going, and each year there's a major new effort, and there's innovation and real commitment, and it's branded. The brand that not only it guides and inspires, but also communicates. I mean, that's what a brand does. It helps you communicate. Otherwise, it would just be too much. We've seen one example of a signature program, and we've seen two actually, the Real Beauty program and the Self-Esteem program at Dove. Let me give you another example. Goldman Sachs in 2008 came out with 10,000 women. They these are, the goal was to reach 10,000 women entrepreneurs in developing countries that really didn't have access to training or financing or anything else. They set up training programs in business management, developed in part by professors at the leading schools. They implemented these at local colleges. They provided access to financing and to mentoring. 10 years later, in 2018, they had reached 10,000 women, and they doubled the goal. And not only did they reach 10,000 women, each of these women mentored 6 to 8 others. So they really reached over 60,000. And you think about what this program does for the employees at Saks, that explaining to people, who have this misconception of what Goldman Sachs is all about, that it's so aggressive and so bottom line oriented. And here they could tell about the 10,000 women. And what a wonderful brand name, by the way. 10,000 brand women, all you have to know, it's aimed at the third world. You can really almost know what the program is about. Now, there's two kinds of signature programs, internal or external. Now, an internal program like Dove Real Beauty is internal, Saks 10,000 Women is an internal program. It's ownable. That means you have strategic control. You can provide resources. You can manage it. You can let it evolve if it should evolve. And it can be connected to your brand and business. It can be part of your team. But finding an internal program is not hard. I mean, it is hard. You want one that's not too narrow, that only covers a little, is only relevant to a subset of your customer base or your employee base. You have to find one that's not taken already, that's doable, that your firm can actually doable, and that it fits. It doesn't feel funny, or it can be made to fit somehow. And no matter what, it's going to be costly and risky. You're going to have to make a commitment, and who knows 5 years from now whether the program, the social effort is still on the top of the list, whether your effort is going to be successful or not. So there's an option, and that is to have an external nonprofit who already owns and needs space. It's proven. There's no startup risk, and it has an established brand. So let me give you an example of that. Habitat for Humanity was started by Linda and Millard Fuller in 1978. Millard had 9 years old. He had made a fortune as an entrepreneur. And he was connected with a retreat with an organization that had experimented with, if you need homes, maybe you could help build it. So he took that core idea and they tried it out in Georgia and in Africa, and they concluded, yeah, this could work. So they founded Habitat for Humanity. And the purpose was ending poverty around the world by providing shelter to those who need it the most. Then 14 years later, they developed the Restore, a home improvement store and donation center where they have new and gently used furniture, appliances, home goods, and so on, that can complement the Habitat for Humanity core effort of building or restoring homes. What enormous success. 39 million people in the newer rebuilt homes. And now they're doing this at the rate of 7 million per year. 1.4 million volunteers have been through their doors, now over 100,000 each year at this rate, at currently. They're in 70 countries, 84 US affiliates. And they're the king of business partnerships. Forget the affiliates, just the national has 100 business partners, 20 of which are legacy partners. They commit to 1 year, $1 million a year for 5 years. 2 legacy partners are over 35 years old. And almost all of them have been around for 5, 10, 15 years. So let's look at one of them. The largest one, the most committed, the most successful partnership is with Thrivent. Thrivent is a Fortune 500 financial services company. They now do all kinds of financial services. They got 190 billion under management. And they have a purpose, a social purpose, in addition to a business purpose. It's humanity thrives when people make the most of all they are given. Humanity thrives when people make the most of all they are given. It helps to know that Thrivent started 120 years ago, serving the congregation of the Lutheran churches in Minnesota. So they kind of had this in their heritage. A tagline they use is "Live generously." So the people they advise in their financial services network, that's part of the deal. You should do that. And they've got first of all, they got a membership, the power of membership. They've got a formal membership. I mean, who does that? They've got their customers are members of the Thrivent community, 2 million of them. And these members have these access to take action groups, action teams, where anybody can form a team, get Thrivent's endorsement and support, and do anything, any kind of do-good program. And the major program that is done by these action teams are connected with Habitat for Humanity. In fact, these things have their own brand. It's called Thrivent Builds. And it's a partnership with Habitat that kind of puts the Thrivent unique characteristic into the projects that they do with Habitat. So here's an example of where a major signature social program for Thrivent is Habitat for Humanity. And it's meant so much for them. They've been with them since 2005. That's 17 years now. And their participation is far among the minimum to be legacy status. So let's talk more specifically about signature social programs, which is the core of the idea. And it, again, represents the purpose, culture of a business. It's who we are. It's real society needs that touch people. There's an emotional content to that. That's one of the attributes of social programs. They can arouse emotions. It's impactful, credible, and committed. And it has a brand that guides, inspires, and communicates. So creating that brand is really indispensable for the success of the program. And so how do you build a signature program brand? Well, I've done a lot about brand building, but let me give you 3 tips that are really relevant for social programs, whether they're internal or external. The first one is to use stories. Now, you really have to communicate the signature program to employees, to customers, to investors, to other stakeholders. They need to know why. You know, why should they care about the program? Why is the program going to be worthwhile, even if it's successful? And how? How is the program going to achieve this? And in the face of media clutter, information overload, and skepticism and greenwashing claims and all that, it's not easy. So that comes the power of stories. And I actually wrote a book called Creating Signature Stories that's based on the same premise. But in this context, it's really relevant, because if you are a company that it makes a take it for granted product that's very mature, kind of boring, and a company that's even more mature and more boring, you really have a tough time getting energy, an image lift and energy into your brand and business. And so stories are particularly helpful because from the social program, because they have a story. Even though you may not, they have a story. And so just let me give you one example. Barclays was at one time in 2012 the least trusted bank in the least trusted industry in the country. And they were blamed by many for the financial debacle of 2008 because they were involved in LIBOR, which is this interest rate signaling stuff. And so anyway, they got blamed for it largely, and they made all kinds of efforts to rebuild their trust, because trust is pretty important in banking. And in 2013, they kind of gave up and said, we got to start over. And they developed a whole new purpose to help people achieve their ambitions. So in 2013, they said to their employees, okay, you guys go out and develop programs and to fulfill our new purpose. And one of these programs was the Digital Eagles. And it was to teach people how to thrive in the digital world. It was started with 17 employees back in 2013. That same program today has 17,000 Barclays employees involved, but it started with 17. And they did things like kids coding and safety programs. They did online courses. They did tea and teach, where they bring in people into the branches and give them tea and teach them how to thrive in the digital world. They did house calls. And they did stories. They put it out stories about some of these engagements, and they made a video of them, 2 or 3 minute video. And one of them was about Steve Rich. And he got involved in walking soccer because he was injured. He couldn't play regular soccer anymore. Walking soccer is no running, no contact, 6 per side, and it's for people that are no longer capable of running comfortably. And it really became his life. It was a really re-energized his life. And the Digital Eagles helped Steve Rich create a website to raise interest. They taught him about keywords. They got the website to enable him to connect people with teams, produce information on schedules, even organize the national championship. He involved some soccer celebrities in his website. And they made a video of this website and made a video of the Steve Rich story. And it was really heartwarming. You got to know Steve's family, his wife, you got to know his grandson, you got to know his mates, that they call mates in England. And a tear came to your eye. It had to during the course of this, because you saw what this did to Steve's life. Well, what this story and others like it did for Barclays was really amazing. Just from 2014 to early 2016, trust went up 33%. 5 times what they were able to do with all that prior advertising and storytelling they did. That, you know, we're changed, and anyway, we weren't as bad as you thought. It didn't work. Consideration was up 130%, another 5 times what they were getting before. I mean, this is really amazing stuff. It is not easy to move these needles on the brand front when you're in the hole. And by 2015, positive press mentions 5,000. Barclays was before buried under bad press. And this changed it. And it all started with a social purpose. It started with the social programs, and it started then with stories about those. Second tip, build brand communities. Again, if you're a normal, take it for granted offering kind of company, you can't build a brand community. I mean, nobody would come. But a brand community is so powerful. It you know, again, brand equity has to do with the energy or awareness. It has to do with image. It has to do with loyalty. Well, brand community is the most highest level of loyalty you can achieve. It's a group of people that share an involvement or even passion in an activity, interest, or issue or interest area with an exemplar brand website as the focal point. And importantly, a brand community delivers social benefits. It delivers self-expressive benefits. And these are among the most important. I mean, these are far more than getting a mayonnaise that tastes good. I mean, these are benefits that really mean something to people. They're really the basis of an affinity. So you look at, for example, Thriven. They have 3 levels of community. They have the total membership. People are part of that community. They divide the national market into zip codes. Each zip code has a Thrivent community in it. And they have a, you know, if you go out and go to Africa and build homes with 12 other people, that's also a community that has enormous energy and influence. Look at the Dove Self-Esteem Program. These 69 million graduates represent a community. And so do the 2.5 million parents and mentors have a community. They share a lot of experiences, they share values, and they share experiences. Third tip, find silver bullet brands. A silver bullet it comes into play when you ask the following question: what makes our program special? What's its secret sauce? And is that secret sauce less visible than it should be? Or maybe even it's hidden? Does it have a brand? Maybe we should have put a brand on this secret sauce, and maybe we should manage that brand so that it can drive our program brand. A silver bullet brand does one of 3 things, usually all 3. Provides energy, provides differentiation, and it provides credibility to a social program. And there's so many cases where it needs more visibility, it needs a stronger brand, or maybe it needs a brand, doesn't even have a brand. But let me give you an example. In 2013, Denise Sandofel, wonderful woman, and that's only 9 years ago. She saw 3 elderly neighbors being evicted in San Francisco. A few months later, she walked by a disheveled young panhandler, a woman, a girl really, a young woman, who said, "I will never be clean. I will never be clean." And those 2 experiences motivated her to start looking into the homeless and their access to showers. And she learned they just really didn't have access. So she decided she would give them showers. So she got an old bus and she converted it into a shower machine for 2 showers in the bus. And she started a nonprofit that went around giving showers. Then she got a 2nd bus and a 3rd bus, and then she expanded to Los Angeles. But when she started, she vowed that her nonprofit was going to be different. They were going to treat their clients differently. they were going to get to know them. They're going to treat them as people, as friends. They're going to find out what their aspirations are, what their background was, what their interests are. And she branded that experience he was going to offer, and they called it radical hospitality. Radical hospitality. And she describes it as our philosophy, meeting our unhoused neighbors wherever they are and delivering extraordinary care. It's rooted in everything we do. And if you have any contact with Lava Mae as a donor, as an entity that wants to duplicate what they're doing, they're now helping people. They've helped 80 to 100 people all around the world do this. In the last 2 years, that's their major focus. But everybody that touches them knows about radical hospitality. And they know what that means and how important it is and how differentiating and how energizing it is. And that's a signature social program. And so the role of that social program, one of its roles is to enhance a business brand, to give it an energy, to give it an image lift, to give it engaging opportunities. If you look at all these books that I've written on this, one of them has purpose plus profit right in the title, and Grow the Pie has purpose and profit in the subtitle. Then you have Porter and Kraber's wonderful book, Creating Shared Value in Harvard Business Review, where they talk about the importance. All these people talk about the importance of having the social program help a business, add value to a business. And so that's really become kind of an accepted thing to do. Now, you have to do it in such a way to avoid greenwashing. We'll talk about that later, but it's such there's so much upside to doing that. So usually when they talk about that, these people I just mentioned, they talk about social effort like grants, voluntary and energy goals, EGG scores, enhancing the business by providing an offering, making an offering that's good for society, like you make windmills or organic food, or you engage in cost reduction because you reduce energy use. This is a strong statement, but almost none of them talk about enhancing a business brand. And yet that's where there's a lot of value in gold. You can give it energy and visibility. You can affect its image, its perceptions, the feelings associated with it. You can give it engagement opportunities. And Dove and ThriveIt have certainly got all those three things from their signature programs. And if you do that, if you improve your brand, we know through all sorts of incidents, there's a dozen examples, quantified examples in the book. And I did research in which we looked at changes in brand equity and its effect on stock return, and it's dramatic. It's just about as much as an ROI change. And so we know that making the brand better will pay off. So let's just look at ThriveIt, what it receives from its sponsorship of Habitat. And this was not their prime motivation for joining forces with Habitat, but by the same token, they can really spend a lot of resources on Habitat because of the very fact that it really has improved their energy and visibility, especially among these 200 million customers. It's given them an image lift, in that there's an emotional connection now. It gives them an image lift because it supports their values to live generously. And it gives them enormous engagement opportunities. There's a volunteer outfit, and they own a piece of the Habitat thing. But signature program also wins. What you have is a signature program providing energy and image lift to the brand, but the brand providing to the social program an endorsement and access to resources. So it's a win-win. So you look at what Habitat gets from the partnership. They get a predictable funds flow and volunteers. I mean, Thrive-In alone was responsible for 295 million over those 17 years and 6.2 million hours of volunteering. They get visibility on the Thrive-In website and among their 200 million customers. They get access to communication budget because Thrive-In talks about Habitat. They get the endorsement. So everybody that knows about Thrive-In knows that they've endorsed Habitat. That's an enormous sense of credibility. And they get engaged supporters. They get all these people that build homes that came out of the Habitat environment. Those are engaged supporters for Habitat. Just as an aside, this all happens because of a brand team at Thrive-In. It's just not the Thrive-In brand. It's in the Habitat brand. It's the Thrive-In Builds brand, the Thrive-In Action Teams brand, the Thrive Live Generously brand. Now, there's a problem, especially if you use these signature programs to help your business. You can be perceived as self-serving, just making token efforts or greenwashing, where all you're trying to do is to get good publicity. So to combat that, you really have to demonstrate authenticity, and you do that by commitment. I mean, Thrive-In's been involved for 17 years with Habitat, Dove since for 19 years. So if you have a long-term commitment like that, that's saying something. And if you have knowledge about what's going on, as Thrive-In does with building homes, and Dove has with Real Beauty and Self-Esteem, and Dove is the thought leader. Dove has done good research. They put on programs. This is not greenwashing. Nobody could accuse them of greenwashing. And you have to demonstrate a passion. And if you show a passion, that's the ultimate defense against signature programs. So anyway, that's my view at this thing. I think it's a unique view because it brings branding to the table. The idea that you have a signature social program to represent your business and a brand to guide and inspire it. And you use that brand to enhance a business, to give it an energy, to give it an image lift, to give it engagement opportunities. And those are the three pillars of brand equity. So it'll enhance a brand, and we know if you can enhance a brand, you will lift a business. So anyway, thanks for having me. That's my story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Aaker. That was lovely. I was so inspired. I think you already answered so many of my questions, but we have a bunch from the audience. If you like, I can represent them to you.
Sure. Sure.
All right. So the first question, Dr. Aaker, comes from Piyush. And Piyush wants to know a little bit more about the Dove campaign in terms of, do you think this is an example of category creation or new branding?
Oh, that's a really good question. That makes me feel warm inside, because that means that she has read my book, Owning Game-Changing Subcategories. No, I think it is a new subcategory. I think they have created what I call in that book a must-have. And you redefine what people are buying. And for some people, this is a characteristic of it's a soap and more generally a product line that is really done good things about women's self-esteem and self-confidence. And I think that's a big problem, and that makes me feel good about Dove. And I like the product anyway. Why wouldn't I buy Dove? And so I think that does it does do exactly that.
Perfect. Our next question is from Jenny. And Jenny wants to know, how much do big companies typically invest in their signature social programs to make an impact deep enough for the community they support? She wants to know how much.
I think, I think it's really kind of surprising how much they are investing. They're investing substantial amounts on the average. And there's some firms that are really exceptional, like Unilever and Patagonia and Salesforce. But it's not so much how much they're spending. Is my position is how you spend it. And my position is you really need to identify signature programs and to spend it in that direction, because signature programs are going to be more impactful because they're more focused, they're more managed, they're better resourced, and so they're going to do it, and they're going to be better able to enhance a business brand. And if they do that, if they become integrated in the business, if they become a source of value for the business, that means they're going to get more resources, and then they're going to do even more and better, and they can scale and they can and expand. And so you have a flywheel kind of thing. And so anyway, there's a lot of people arguing that we need to do this. And as far as I'm concerned, that argument is less interesting because it's kind of over. I mean, people are saying, yeah, I have to do that. So the question now is how.
And like you said, people are coming up with new ways to define that how all the time, which is so wonderful to see. Our next question is from Vicky. Vicky asks that for mid-sized communities, is there a benchmark for minimum spend to launch and maintain an internal program?
No, I don't think so. In fact, but I think that all companies can do this, even the smallest companies. The company I'm associated with, Profit, is relatively modest in the big scheme of things, but we've got a huge effort, Profit Impact it's called, and it involves spending consulting time helping nonprofits, and we help 15, 20 a year, and it involves all sorts of programs. And so I think it doesn't matter the size. It still, I think it's possible to develop signature programs, even if you got small size. And it probably is better to have an external nonprofit as your signature program, and find a way to sort of own a piece of that.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Dr. Aaker, the next question we have is from Zev. And to be honest, this has been my question as well. I've been doing technology marketing in corporate organizations for over 17 years, and this is the same question I have. So Zev says, the question I've had to address from management is something like, we know improving trust is important and a good thing, but how do we measure the business impact of improving trust? How do we measure the main business impact? Well,
that's a really good question. And it comes down to a basic question is how do you measure the value of investments into brands in general? And nobody asked the question, how do you measure the results of investing in people? Because they know instinctively that people is part of the strategy. Unless you have good people that are motivated and managed, then you won't succeed. And so I think that fundamentally what you have to do is you have to develop your business strategy and say, what's the role of the brand? What brand's equity do we have to support this strategy? And trust is an important part of brand equity. And so you have to ask the question, in the context of our strategy, how important is trust? Can we get there without having trust? And if we need it, how are we going to get it? That's a brand problem. And now there's ways to measure brand, the strength of the value of a brand, but these ways are sort of plus or minus 30%. And they're not anything you can do to manage a business by. And we do know, we can demonstrate, as I demonstrated in my empirical research using econometrics, that on average, investments in brand pay off. We know that. You can find all kinds of case studies, like the Dove case, in which you can demonstrably see that a jump in brand has paid off big time. And through enhanced energy and visibility and image lifts and participation. And so anyway, I think that's the way to look at it. And you just have to educate these senior executives to what brands are all about.
Yeah, that's so well said. I mean, I find marketing, my organization, constantly pushed between development and sales. And especially when the macroeconomic climate is as difficult as it is today, the choices on investment get prioritized: technology, people, maintaining business, and then brand sort of falls in that. But you're so right, because how can we have trust without adequate branding investment? Very well said. Our last question is from Jenny again, and she says that for small businesses that do not have adequate employee or resource bandwidth, can they pick one or two of your tips to build their signature social programs? And if yes, then what is the one or two things that they can do to improve?
Well, I think all three of my tips are really sensational. And I think anybody can use them. The smallest company can use them. And I picked these three out of the 30 or 40 I could pick, is because they're ones that A, are very powerful, and B, underused and almost unknown. And so, but I have to say they're not easy to use. It's not easy to find a branded differentiator or a silver bullet or the right story that you can leverage. And even if you can find the right story, it's not so easy to get it done, to actually do it professionally and tell it in the right way. And then forming a community is also not easy. But if you do, it's such a home run. I mean, it's just, and not only that, but the process of forming a community gets you to do a lot of the right things. I was talking to a colleague of mine who's writing a book on sort of changing marketing so that you're involved in the experience side, not just the buying side, but the experience. And you get involved in the experience. And it's so hard, but it's such a home run if you can do it. The Airbnbs of the world and the ones that have pulled it off. So anyway, I really think that all those three things can be done for just somebody that's got 3 or 4 or 5 people.
Wonderful. It is, just listening to you speak, Dr. Aaker, I'm re-energized and rejuvenated, and your enthusiasm is spilling onto me, so I'm feeling wonderful. But we do have one last question, if I may.
Sure.
From Dhaval. And Dhaval says, could you please share your thoughts, Dr. Aaker, regarding how signature social programs would be affected by business cycles, especially boom times versus bust times? Well,
that's why it's so important for the social program to be integrated into the business strategy and to provide value to the business through enhancing the business brand. Because if that's the case, I mean, you look at that at Dove, and you say to Dove, well, we're going to cut back this stuff you're doing on self-esteem and real beauty, because times are tight. We got to spend more money advertising the benefits of our soap. Well, that's absurd. I mean, the whole business strategy is real beauty and self-esteem. That is the business strategy. So it's not as if you could cut back that and then replace it with more evidence on the business strategy. It is the business strategy. And if you ask Thrivent, why don't you cut back on habitat? Because, times are tough and we got to, we don't have the extra money anymore. Well, what are you going to do with all these employees and customers in their case? I mean, they got customers that are involved in habitat, and it's doing so much for them. It's delivering so much loyalty. It's delivering so much energy that it would be insane. So anyway, that's the reason why you want to have programs that actually help your business in one way or the other, and usually doing it through a brand.
I love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Aaker. I love that. Let me now turn it to David Hansen. Would you please
Yes.
deliver some comments? Thank you.
Yeah, wow, what an excellent presentation and discussion. I'm going to make a personal note. I took 2 classes from David decades ago, and both inspired, but more notably, they impacted my career throughout my professional life. And I suspect he's done it again tonight. So I'd like you to open up your cameras or use the checks box and give our professor a round of applause.
Thank you for having me, David.